are here. And also, I'm excited to also bring up our speaker tonight, which is Karen England. Karen England is the president of California-based Capital Resource Institute. CRI is a pro-family public policy organization with a focus on education, religious freedom, parental rights, and life. Karen has a long history of mobilizing citizens at rallies and school board meetings and at state legislatures, and is a highly coveted speaker due to her experience. Today, she leads the fight to expose and eliminate progressive ideologies in the classroom. This includes CRT, social emotional learning, we've been talking a lot about that lately, and graphic sexual education. She is an effective leader in reclaiming parental rights at the school district level and is passionate about sharing her decades of knowledge. Karen has been featured on various media outlets, including The Laura Ingraham Show, The O'Reilly Factor, Tucker Carlson Tonight, The San Francisco Chronicle, WorldNet Daily, The Flash Report, and Fox News, to name a few. She has long been a coveted speaker among conservative crowds due to her passion and engaging conversational personality. Karen is happily married to John, and they live in Tennessee, not too far from here. So please help me welcome Karen.
Thank you. It's so weird to have someone like read your bio. It's like I'm not all that great, although I turned to my staff and I said, "Do you want my autograph? I sound pretty good up there." So thank you, and thank you for hosting this. I'm encouraged by what I see going on in Tennessee, and that's good because I'm also discouraged by some of what I see in Tennessee. Can we get the first slide up? So I'm with Capital Resource Institute, and we are a pro-family public policy group out of California. We were formed this last June was 35 years, and I've been there since 1999. I started part-time as a homeschool mom, as the program director, worked my way up, and eventually I became the executive director. I've been the executive director for about 17 years. Following my husband, we then moved to northern Nevada, which is where my husband was from. We then founded Nevada Family Alliance, which is just like CRI, but in Nevada. And then we moved to Tennessee to be with our kids and grandkids. And so we have expanded into Tennessee, and it's really just been this last year that I've started to get busy in Tennessee. And this coming year, we will be much busier. We've got some legislation that we're wanting to sponsor. And one of the things that our organization is, I don't know if you're familiar with Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF, but we're allied with ADF. And so things like, I'm going to talk about the opt-out form, those things, we go ahead and we get legal counsel to look over it for us and make sure that I'm citing the law correctly, and if I've got a question, I can call ADF up. So I'm very, very thankful for that and that organization. So we can go to the next slide. I'm going to talk a little bit about sex ed, next slide, and family life. I can have staff spell check and stuff, so I hope. I was in public school in Boulder, Colorado, so I know about feelings, but not much else. So Tennessee has some very, very good laws on sex education. And until 2 years ago, the law only mandated certain school districts that had a certain pregnancy rate. Those were the school districts that must teach sex ed. And the law is a very good law, and Becky is passing out several statutes that are in the law, but it's very specific in that it's abstinence-based, not just based, but it is abstinence and really abstinence only. And it has a high regard for marriage and traditional marriage at that. And so the law is really, really a great law. A year and a half ago, 2 years ago, the Republicans, we're a nonpartisan group, so I can bash on both sides. The Republicans mandated sex ed on every single school district in the state of Tennessee. It is a must. It's a shall. It's not, you don't have an option now not to do it. So, with that being said, what happened was we've gone from kind of family life into sex ed, and there are a lot of laws, and I'm going to talk about them, I've cited them, and then I've cited all of them on what I'm going to out, or Becky handed out to you all. So you have them, you can go look up the codes, etc. But one of the things that happened the minute that law passed was Planned Parenthood hired a person to come in, and this person's sole job was to work in the schools, to work getting curriculum into the school districts. Even though there's laws that say she's not supposed to be doing that. So, next slide. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about family life, because that's what they like you to think it is. And that's when you go, I was on the website of your school district, and you go and you look at the handbook for family life. That's what they're calling it, but it really has become sex education. And sex education, not just in California, but all over the nation, has become comprehensive sex ed. And so that's important to know. This is not the sex education that we used to attend. As a matter of fact, a majority of the curriculums, and certainly the ones the state is recommending in Tennessee, barely cover the things we would want them to cover. They barely talk about, hey, you're going to stink, your hair's going to grow, boys, you need to shower more frequently. Girls, you're going to start to need deodorant at 11 or 12, or whenever that is. A lot of that is cut out, or it's only a paragraph in everything that's in the school district curriculum. So when the state went in and they mandated sex ed on every single school district, they put forth, and you go to the next one, I'm going to back up what I was going to say. So I want to talk a little bit about comprehensive sex ed. A couple of years ago, the group called SECUS, they're one of the main cohorts along with, and by the way, when you publicly speak, you're not supposed to say I think you know that, so just go ahead and count on your quarter for every time. They are a major group that they've been around for about 30 years, and they came out December of 2019, and they came out with a press release, and it said, you will never hear us say SECUS without saying sex ed for social change. They will always say it when they say their name, and this is directly from SECUS, and it says, this is SECUS's point of view, and this is the movement that is pushing sex education that Tennessee is calling family life. It says, while sex education is a necessary sexual tool, it can and should be so much more than that. With sex education, we have a golden opportunity to create a cultural shift, tackling the misinformation, shame, and stigma that create the basis for many of today's sexual and reproductive health rights issues, like, and they list reproductive justice, LGBTQ equality, sexual violence prevention, gender equality, and dismantling white supremacy. They are telling us they want to use our classrooms for a golden opportunity to shift our culture. Are those of you working with youth hearing what they're upfront about what they're going to do? Do you believe them? Because they have billions of dollars behind them. They're upfront about what they plan to do and why they want sex ed in every single school district, and they want to make sure that it's in every single school district. So let's go to the next slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the state laws in Tennessee, but one thing that I is really important to understand is that you have competing worldviews. And you have, I'm going to put this down, competing interests. So you have parents, and you have teachers, and you have school board members, and you have a Department of Education, and you have legislators who write laws. And whether it's Tennessee or other states, they usually don't really understand the practicalness of how those are implemented, or what they do, or what's really going on the ground. It's not just Tennessee. That's how it is everywhere. And so when you're going up against, and it is up against, it's two competing worldviews. There's a worldview that believes our kids are sexual beings and that sexual rights are human rights. Okay, you need, the very basic thing you need to understand, it all boils down to worldview and how they view our kids, and that they have sexual rights, and it's their job to teach them to exercise those rights and to exercise them responsibly. And a lot of what I'm going to say, I'm not going to say the words I usually say. I say, like I said, a lot strange words. Anyway, a lot of things I never said, like, until 3 years ago. And I'm pretty old, but they're teaching them in 5th grade now. So, kindergarten, I'm from California, they're teaching them pre-K. So one of the things that the worldview, you need to understand that they are so much more, thank you to the church to open up, but they are so much more serious and passionate about indoctrinating our youth than we are. Thank you to all the parents that are out here on a Wednesday night. I mean, that speaks volumes. I know how hard it is with 4 kids. I had 4 kids, and you've got soccer, and you've got this, and you've got that, and then we're volunteering at church. But we cannot just cede this ground to the other side. And those of us that are believers, it is a spiritual warfare side. And it is very clear that there are 2 sides here. And for those people that say, oh, public schools aren't just for the Christians, you know what? They're just not for the progressives either. They're for all of the public. That means our voice gets to be heard too, not just silenced. So, having said that, I'm kind of going off, which I do often. I'm going to have to keep track of my time. There's the laws, and what the other side has done is they've come in and they've rewritten what they call standards. And you're going to hear, as you look into what's going on in your local school district, you're going to hear, well, we're following the standards. That's great. You can follow the standards. Standards are a guideline. But that's where the left is getting their ammo to say, well, we need to do this because the standards say this. Yes, but the law says, and the law is where you go. And in Clarksville, they came up with all of these standards, and we're going to teach how to consent to sex with minors, and how to get an affirmative yes, and all of this stuff. And I was like, well, hang on, let me show you the law, because the law says you must teach them refusal skills. And the law says you must teach them age of consent in the context of age of consent. It's illegal to have sex outside of that. It doesn't mean, why are we teaching our boys how to break the law, how to get a girl to say yes? What on earth are you doing? And that was the battle that we were going on in Clarksville, and I'm certain it's going on here as well. So right here is the law that was updated beginning the 2021-22 school year. Each LEA, that's a school district, shall devise, adopt, and implement a program of family life education in conformance with the curriculum guidelines established for such programs by this part. And then that part is laid out in a lot of what I handed out to you. Those different parts, those are kind of like the baseline. So go on to the next slide. It also says that each LEA, that's your local school district, shall locally develop and adopt a family life curriculum in compliance with the requirements of this part, or shall adopt the family life curriculum adopted by the State Board of Education. Well, this is interesting because the State Board of Education hasn't adopted one. But they do have some that they consider compliant or legally permissible. I'm working on a project to show that they are illegal, and we will expose that later. And I'll, as my presentation goes on, you'll see. So, next slide. Interesting info. Just took a little bit of time on the Southern County School District website. Our organization, we did this in California, we filed 900 FOIAs on every single school district to find out what was really going on in the classroom. We also did that in Tennessee. Sumner has not responded, so I will do a follow-up, but that is the only true way you can find out what's going on in the school district. To give you an example, in Clarksville, they sent out a law, and they sent out all this information and said, hey, the law says this, and because this new law says we have to develop this curriculum, we've been working, and here are the 3 curriculums that we have picked, so please come and view it, and then we're going to vote on it at the next school board meeting. So I called the director of personnel, and because my 25 years is in sex ed, I mean, that's kind of my thing. I never thought as a Christian you'd be called to sex ed and go to sex ed conferences and stuff. It's really, really weird. Yeah, I was hoping to kind of be a missionary to Hawaii or something, but no, I got called to sex ed. So I called the curriculum of development, and in Clarksville they have 73 people in the downline for developing curriculum. She says, well, I have an appointment at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock tomorrow. I'm like, oh, I have 1 and 2, because that's 3 curriculums to go through. I was like, can I have both? And so she's like, yes. And so I went in, and of course, not everything was there, and I know this from my work in California. Did you know when you order curriculum, your school district gets it? For instance, the state recommends the Michigan model, so I ordered it. It comes in, you get it, but you know what else comes in with the Michigan model? A little flash drive. It has stuff that the parent will never see, only the teacher sees. So when they hand you the notebook to go through at the office, there's the flash drive. Or other companies have the login where you have to log in to get all the updates and additional information. So even if you're looking, really I believe FOIAs are the only way to find out what's really being taught in the school districts. And so I will follow up with Sumner County and let you guys know what I find out. But I'm going to go through a couple of the laws, and I'm going to talk about what happened in Clark County, because as I'm getting FOIAs back, I'm finding that it's happening in other counties. So let's go to the next slide. The school district must not, that's not you may, must not means must not, use the services of any individual or organization that endorses student non-abstinence as appropriate or acceptable to or promote gateway sexual activity. That seems pretty clear, doesn't it? That's really clear. So, then the family life curriculum must be abstinence-centered and must encourage abstinence regardless of a student's current or prior sexual experience. So when you go look at curriculum at your local school district, keep this in mind. They'll probably have a lot of added stuff, but it also says it must have this. This doesn't mean one sentence that says abstinence is the best way. This is repeated throughout those statutes that I handed out, and they're out of compliance with the law. And I don't care if they're okay with the standards. The law is what the legislators, which the people actually voted for and are accountable to, and that's what your local school district has to follow. We were able to force Clarksville to go scrap everything, go back to the drawing board because they were violating so many laws, including the law they sent out that said these 3 curriculums. When I met with her that day, I asked her, could she show me the law? She showed it to me. I said, that's not the law that was passed in 21-22. She said, really? No, here's the law that was passed in 21-22. They used a bill that got introduced and was never made it out of a committee that was by some progressives that they had introduced, and they were building a curriculum around it. And it was kind of funny. Becky's here with me, and she likes to get up at the school board meeting and say, well, you know, you guys have all these people on staff that are in charge of curriculum, and it took some, I'm a grandma with a fashion degree to figure out the law for you. And it did. It was just really simple, and it was only my experience, because this is what I know from California, sex ed. Teachers are going to believe that. They get an email that says the law says this, we have to do this. Of course you're going to believe it. It was just a God thing that I actually got my hands on and said, no, this is not what the law says. What law are you using? So that's the kind of crazy stuff that goes on. Says the family life curriculum must, again, not can, should, must teach students the value of reserving the expression of sexual activity for marriage. Do you see that we got that whole idea in 3 different laws right there? That's not just 1 or 2. It's not just, hey, you should mention it in passing. Problem is, schools aren't following it because they're going to these trainings that are talking about standards, and you're going to have to push that. Next slide. The curriculum must not, again, must not promote implicitly or explicitly any gateway sexual activity that encourages students to experiment with non-coital sexual activity. And you guys can look up non-coital. I learn words every day. That's really, really clear. That means, like in the Michigan model, which the state promotes, and our school district was one of the 3 they were going to choose, that means this is exactly what you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to have, and I went and read this at the school board meeting, the steps: take the condom off directly to avoid infection after having sexual intercourse. Hold the condom at the ran and withdraw the penis from the partner before the penis becomes soft. And I read on and on and on. This was in one of the pages that I went to look at in my local school district.
What age is that being taught?
This one was middle school. This was 7th and 8th grade. This is 7th and 8th grade, and then from the Michigan model, and the Michigan model, the state of Tennessee Department of Education recommends. But do you think that adheres to the very first one?
No.
Not even close. And there's more, so let's go on. The district must notify parents no less than 30 days prior to commencing instruction of family life curriculum of their ability to examine the instructional materials. Here's the thing, most people think you're gonna get it, it's in your student handbook. And your student handbook, because I went and I looked last night, that is the one thing I could find online. You're notified when you get the student handbook. That's your notification. You're not, by law, you don't need to get another one. Now, if you wanted to, you could ask the school board to ask the school, hey, we want a second notice right before you teach it. Those are things that you can do locally to make sure that you're educated and that the public knows when this is going to go on. In addition to that, Tennessee has opt-out, but your local school board can have an opt-in. So your local school board can have a policy that says before any child is in sex ed, they opt in. So if you don't have the note with my signature on it, my kid's down the hall in the library. And that's what I'm recommending people do, and I have an opt-in policy that I worked on with Alliance Defending Freedom, and I'm happy to travel here, go to your school board meetings, do calls with legal counsel and your school board members, as long as we're not violating any open meeting laws, and I'm happy to do that until we get rid of sex ed altogether. Next one, parents must be notified no less than 30 days prior to instruction that they may excuse their student from any portion of the family life curriculum in the form of a written request to the student's instructor, school counselor, or principal. So, we have developed an opt-out form for Tennessee, and you can go to, we're moving some websites over in the middle of the night. So, this is a barcode, and we can hand out these cards. Go to the Kitchen Table Activist, I'm a podcaster now, I guess, and go to resources, and the Tennessee opt-out form is there. And that is for both sex ed. It is also for any conversation about gender identity and sexual orientation. And it also cites and is good for the federal law. I think you've seen recently several school districts in Tennessee are doing the nosy questionnaires that are asking about your personal beliefs. And it actually is a violation of PICRA. You need to do that form, and you need to do it for every single student, every single grade, every single year. Don't assume that they're in second grade that they're not gonna, get a nosy survey. Or that sex ed isn't taught in the 6th grade, so I'm clear. So you need to really assert your parental rights, or they're gonna be gone and it's gonna be too late. So next slide, we'll finish up with some of the laws. A district is not required to promote. Let me back up. So, when the Republicans thought it was really great to mandate sex ed on every single school district, so no local school district could say no, they also, I know that they were thinking they meant well, but I just don't know why they're not paying attention to what's going on nationwide. They also put in law, the district is not required to provide instruction through a sexual orientation curriculum or gender identity curriculum. However, if they choose to provide instruction, they must notify parents no less than 30 days prior to commencing instruction whether or not it's offered as part of the family life program. That kind of opened the door. Prior to that, the assumption was they're not teaching it. But the minute they say, they're not required to, but if they're gonna, this is what you gotta do. I get what they were trying to do, but that was, the left is so far ahead of us on kind of language and how they then go in and say, well, yes, we can. See, this law says we can, you just gotta notify parents. They figured we'd be doing this. They just thought we need to notify parents. Then the last one is parents are permitted to examine the sexual orientation curriculum or gender identity curriculum and confer with the instructor, school counselor, or principal regarding any or all portions. Parent wishing to excuse their child is allowed to, and you just need to do it in writing, which is why we created that form for you. And if for some reason that form doesn't work for you, because let's say you do want them in sex ed, but but you want to be notified on sexual orientation, gender identity. All you need to do is call me, and I can modify, the opt-out for you. I believe in parental rights. What I may choose for my child may be different than what you choose for yours. I want to help you assert your parental rights. You may want your child. Some of the schools here are teaching abstinence and that kind of thing. You may want them in that. That's fine. But if you don't want them in nosy surveys or the sexual orientation, then we'll modify the form for you. Because the kids belong to you. They don't belong to the government. If I don't talk to my child about sex ed, you know what? I will stand before the Lord on that. It is not Caesar's job. It is not the government's job. And the church needs to stop doing that. And stop doing it. We need to have more kids opting out in the library so that 7 kids are saying, why are we in this class? How come my mom didn't opt me out?
Yeah.
Let's do that. Let's say no to the government that, no, this is the purview of the family and the church.
Right.
And churches, and I'm not specifically aiming at you, host something where you take care of these issues on a Saturday afternoon with mothers and daughters and fathers and sons. Use the curriculum that is out there. But this is not the purview of government, and the way things are going in this country, Tennessee is not safe from this stuff. Not even close. I am shocked at the amount of emails I've been getting over the pronoun use the kids were asked the very first day of school. And the teachers that are coming to me saying, I will call them by the preferred name, but I can't call her a boy. And so if you have any teachers in that situation, please send them my way, because ADF is getting ready. We put some teachers together. They're going to be sending out a letter. We have a student in Hamilton County that got in trouble for referring to by the wrong pronoun. My Bible kind of dated me because it had Bill O'Reilly, but he's been gone forever. And I do have to say, Laura Ingram was when she had a radio show, so I'm really old. But my Tucker appearance was the real Tucker Carlson, and it was over a first grader in Rockland, California, who ran up her first day of school to a little boy that had been in her class the year before, and she called him by his name, but he had become a girl and had a new name, and you can Google it. She was reprimanded on the playground. She was then taken out of class in the afternoon, down to the principal's office to make sure she wasn't doing it intentionally and to be bullied. Here's the thing. When it came out, when I did FOIAs, the kid didn't complain. They had a busybody that was following that student around, making sure nobody was offending this first grader. I mean, how many of us come back, even in high school, and Mrs. Smith is now Mrs. So-and-so, and you just... Here's the thing, her parents didn't mind anything that went on with this gender. They had done a gender reveal the second to last day of school from the kindergarten class. The mom didn't have a problem with that. The mom had actually told her little girl, when you see him, he's had a hard summer, you go up and be nice to him. And she goes up and calls him his boy name and ends up in the principal's office. That was my Tucker Carlson appearance. Don't think it's not going to happen here, because I've already heard from parents in Tennessee that this has happened. So with that, I'm going to hang around. Go ahead and put up the next slide, because it's got my cell phone. I'm very big on texting. I won't answer you unless you, if I don't know the number. So take my number, take my email, go to our website, sign up for our emails, capitalresource.org. We're sending one out tomorrow on Tennessee and some of the stuff that's going on in Tennessee. There's also a really good law, and I didn't put it on here because I had to limit the laws I was putting on, but the curriculum, none of them can have any ties to Planned Parenthood or organizations that perform abortions. So you open up the Michigan model that the state recommends and lots of school districts are considering. You look at the page of all the contributors, and there it is, Planned Parenthood. In Clarksville, one of the 3 that they picked was the one with ties to Planned Parenthood, and then there's another one from a company called ETR. Well, ETR is a company with ties to Planned Parenthood. So again, we challenged the school district and said, here are the ties, and we live them together. Again, sex ed is my life, so I have the ties to Planned Parenthood. Said, you can't use that curriculum either. They had to scrap it, and they still haven't approved curriculum yet because we pushed back and said, here's what the law says. You're going to follow the law. These are our kids, not yours, and we're not going to stand for you just doing your own thing with our kids. So having said that, thank you for being here. And answer any questions you have. Our organization, we're a nonprofit. We exist to help you. We want to help you assert your parental rights. Use us. Don't not call me or not email me or think I'm too busy. And if I don't email you back, just keep emailing me because sometimes it just goes over my head. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Joanna. All right. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. And so that I hope that helps you to be informed of the law that is here in Tennessee and also what is going on in Sumner County and here. So there are